So I would like to start. One of my very first PowerPoint presentations in April was letting our city council know what our vision and priorities were. So I'm going to remind everyone of what they are. And they are five different items here. Number one, we're a professional organization. We are going to focus on crime reduction, traffic and pedestrian safety, community engagement, and community policing. Okay. So here's an organization chart of the Port Hueneme Police Department. As you can see, we have 22 sworn officers, 2 that are administrators, myself and Commander Albertson, which has 20 additional officers that work out in the field. The 4 columns on the left are our patrol officers and patrol division, and the column on the right is our investigative services division, each overseen by a sergeant. So you have 5 sergeants there who then lead 5 groups of officers. The red, as it jumped ahead on me, are the officers that are currently injured on duty, and as a result of that, it's really put a strain on our department resources. But thanks to the officers that are healthy, we've been able to fill in those gaps, and while it's made things difficult, you'll see that they've been able to maintain a level of service that our citizens do appreciate. On the right-hand side, we have our civilian division, which is overseen by our support services manager, Sylvia Paniagua, who did come from the Oxnard Police Department. We have our column on the left, which is our 5 dispatchers, along with a half dispatcher, which is currently vacant. And then we have our 3 full-time civilian personnel on the right, along with a half-time, and then 1 vacant position for our records technician. So at this current time, we have 2 vacant half-time positions at the Port Hueneme Police Department. So Councilmember Hensley has brought this question up for several months now, and so I do have statistical information now, hard facts to present and really paint a picture of where the police department stands as compared to other police departments in the state of California. As you see here, I did take a comparative using sworn officers from other agencies along with their population to create how many sworn officers per 1,000 residents. Here we have 2 departments from Ventura County, the Ventura Police Department, as well as the Oxnard Police Department. And then I also pulled out a few coastal agencies that are municipalities that also have a police department that are similar in size. So here we have the Laguna Police Department, which has 2.25 officers per 1,000, and the other 2 cities, which are probably more characteristic of our city, and they're averaging essentially 1.35 between the 2 of them. But if you take all of those into account, they average 1.65 officers per 1,000. And as you can see, the Port Hueneme Police Department is actually underneath the 1,000 or the 1 threshold of 0.96 officers per 1,000 residents. So what does that mean? If we take into account what would be reasonable, which would be 1.31 officers per 1,000 residents, that means our police department should be in the area of about 30 sworn officers. And that's even below what would be, I consider, the state average of 1.65 officers per 1,000. So if we take this a little bit further, if you add 8 police officers to your police force at $150,000 an officer, that's $1.2 million, which is quite a bit of money. So, and it's really quite unreasonable at this point. So what I've done here is look a little more forward in terms of what can we do to help save money and really what are our needs. And something I've noticed, and I think a lot of you have all noticed, that other agencies are what called community service officers or police service officers. These are civilian personnel that actually work out in the field with officers that actually take reports, transport prisoners, and do it at a fraction of the cost and a fraction of the training as sworn police officers. They can transport prisoners to county jail for us, they can respond to traffic collisions, they can take cold reports, and that's something that we don't have here. So that's something that we can look at here in the future and consider in helping fill in the gap, as opposed to hiring 8 police officers. Perhaps we hire 4 police service officers and just 2 sworn officers, which then results in a much smaller bill of $620,000 as opposed to $1.2 million. But that's just to kind of let council know where we are at and what we need to do to get commensurate with all the other agencies. So population here, and this is a foundational slide for some of the subsequent slides. In 2000, here's a picture of the population in the year 2000 and now in 2017. As you see, we are one of the very few cities that has not grown at all. Council knows this, but this is something I wanted to really share with our citizenry here and the people here visiting us, is to show that we've had really no growth in our city for the last 17 years or during this century as compared to the other cities. And we all know when you grow, there's more revenue, more property taxes, and which assists our budget. So now straight to the crime statistics. In 2017, some of the more notable statistics is our violent crime rate. You see there's 38 violent crimes that we had in our city in 2017. And if you go up to 2015, you see at one point we had 62 and 66 just last year. If you move over to the property crime side, you see that while it has lowered as compared to 2015, we did have a 1% increase as compared to last year. So where does that leave us? So as compared to last year, we had a 43% reduction in violent crime. And as I have expressed earlier in other presentations, there's no greater marker in terms of knowing how much safer your city is or as compared to other cities. Our property crime didn't go up by 1%, really thanks to larcenies and thefts, and I'll address that a little bit later on in the presentation. But that results in an overall crime reduction of 5.2% for this year. So between 2015 and 2016, we had a 10% crime reduction. This last year, 5%. So over the last 3 years, we've had a 15% reduction in crime in the city of Port Hueneme. If you actually take all of these statistics over the last century, this century so far, you can see that this is one of the lowest years that we've had. Not the lowest in terms of number of crimes reported, but as you'll see, as we compare that to population size, it will be. So here's a really big picture of, again, this entire century. If you start with 2017 and the right green column, you'll see that our violent crime rate per 1,000 people is down to 1.67 crimes, where it had actually maxed out in 2006 at 5.13 crimes per 1,000 people. Again, no greater indicator to know just how safe your city is. If you move all the way to the right-hand side, the yellow column, when you bring that all together with property crime and violent crime, based on our population, it is the safest crime year that we've had to date. And so you know where I get my figures. I get my population figures directly from the California Department of Finance, and just compare them and do the statistics as compared to our UCR crime rates. So here's another slide which shows the decline in crime over the last 5 years and the trends that we are currently experiencing with violent crime and overall crime descending quite rapidly, and our property crime staying pretty stale. So when we break this down even further, you'll see here that the biggest contributing factor to our property crime is larcenies/thefts, and in our violent crime category, 19 assault with deadly weapons. Now, when you break this down in percentage, that's 67%, or 2/3 of our crime is theft on the property crime side. So what I decided to do is break that out even more so you really can see what type of theft that we are encountering here in the city. So when you break that down even further, 34% are theft from vehicles, and 25% is shoplifting when you take into account all the larceny occurring. So if we could get our citizens to lock their vehicles, our crime rate would be that much lower. And that's one of the biggest things that our own community can do to help affect our crime rate in our own city. So unfortunately, in 2008, 2017, we had 2 homicides, one on July 4th and one on July 30th. One involved a 16-year-old victim who was shot and killed by a 17-year-old, and a 61-year-old victim who was killed by blunt force trauma by Peter Dirksen, a 37-year-old transient. When we compare our crime statistics to other cities in the county of Ventura for 2017, this is what we get. We, along with Oxnard and Camarillo, saw significant decreases in crime this past year, while cities as Simi Valley and Moore Park and Santa Paula all saw dramatic increases. Most notably, you can see how our violent crime rate has dropped as compared to other agencies. Arrest statistics. During 2017, we arrested 951 people, 827 misdemeanors, and 124 felonies, which is actually a 10% reduction from last year, because last year we had approximately 1,045 arrests. But this just lets you have an idea of just how many people we are still arresting in our small city. When you break down our arrests even further, a majority of our arrests are drug-related, as well as people who have warrants. And most of the warrants are generated from the misdemeanor arrests that we make that end up going to warrant. And so we subsequently end up picking these people up 30 or 60 days later. And then notably, and this was something that was new to me, is that we do have a significant drunk in public issue where our officers are regularly picking up people who are intoxicated in public. And this is just an arrest breakdown for the last 3 months of the year. So when we talk for calls for service, in 2017, we had 21,659 calls for service, which is nearly a 3,000 call reduction from the previous year, but more so than from 2015. When you break down these calls for service, I took out the top 10 call types for the last 3 years, and the number 1 is our subjects disturbing, medical calls, and check the well-being calls. As really the number 2 and 3 really have to lend to the older community that we have, our older citizens that we have in our community. And then something I found interesting is that actually firework calls rank in the top 10, but I would say about 95% of those calls are actually generated over a 2-week period. So our communication center, this is the number of calls that actually come into our communication center. As you can see, it's been on a steady decline over the last 3 years, actually 15,000 fewer calls into our dispatch center over the last 3 years. But when you actually put the calls for service side by side with the actual number of calls that are being received by our call center, you'll actually see that even though we had more calls in 2015 than in 2017, we actually responded to more calls for service in 2017. So our officers are just as busy out in the field as they were, several years ago, in spite of having fewer calls coming into our call center. And that's why I put these 2 graphs side by side. So this is our call volume by day. This is how many, if you break down all the calls we receive throughout the year and you break them down by the 7 days of the week. This is a very interesting chart, simply because most cities, their busiest days are Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But in this community, it's not. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which really lends to the fact that our population actually doubles during the work week because of the base and of the port. And so when you look at the lines here, you can see why we're so unique in how we do things here is because while we are only 22,800 people as a city, we essentially double during the day. And again, more calls for service, a bigger burden on our officers actually out in the field, more traffic. So every year we present this slide is how many complaints have we received at the police department. We have received 3 citizen complaints during 2017. They were all found to be unfounded. We did have 2 internal administrative complaints. They were both sustained. And these were both internal complaints against officers. We had no reportable uses of force to the state this year. Last year we only had 1. Which really goes to show if we're responding to 21,000 calls for service every year and we have no reportable uses of force or incidents to the state, it really goes to show just what type of police department we have. So some people, the 2 big issues that I've been receiving over the last year are the homeless and graffiti. And so I'm going to address our homeless issue right now and kind of try and paint a picture of what it is that we're dealing with. This was a homeless count that is done every year by a service provider through the County of Ventura, and they do this count generally at the end of the year in December, but it was delayed because of the Thomas fire, so it was done this past February. Unfortunately, this year, there was some sort of communication problem and they did not include us in that survey where they actually have their volunteers go out and do a homeless count. Well, rest assured, 7 is not the amount of homeless we have here in the city of Port Hueneme. And when asked about that, they say that they use the federal definition of homeless in creating their statistics. So if our homeless person is living in a car or transient is living in a car, he is not considered homeless. If they are just happen to have enough money to stay in a motel for the night, they are not considered homeless. So based on what my officers have told me, our true number is closer to 45 to 50 transients that actually reside and consider the city of Port Hueneme their home or their home base. And as you can see, now that I have corrected that figure on how that fits with the other cities in the County of Ventura. And I would say that is probably one of our top calls for service in terms of subjects disturbing. You saw how that was our #1 item. And so it is responding to the shopping centers to deal with the homeless that are disturbing in these shopping centers. So I also wanted to paint a picture as to where we were with our marijuana dispensaries and our applications. This stretch of Channel Islands is eloquently being called the Green Mile. So we have 8 dispensaries within a 1-mile radius here in the city of Port Hueneme. And they are all delineated there, and you can see in the permitted column what they've been authorized or what they've applied for. The number 4 there that is blank, that is a business owner that we know has already come forth and will be submitting their application here in the next week or so. So I did not actually list them in there, but that is their location. And so this really kind of shows you where we are right now with our dispensaries. There's one other dispensary, which you all know as the Top Deck Bar, which is in the south end, as well as the Industrial Way building, which has the potential of having some sort of cannabis use here in the near future. But that kind of gives you a picture of where we are at right now. Cannabis by the numbers. So now that we've had a dispensary open for over 30 days, I've been able to obtain some numbers thanks to Mr. Tatum in terms of where are the customers coming from, who's coming into our medicinal dispensaries to purchase marijuana. So they're all coming from Oxnard. Nearly half of our customers are coming from the city of Oxnard, with a little almost 11% from the city of Port Hueneme, 18% from Ventura, 7% from Camarillo, and the 14% other, I would gather, are probably going to be people from Los Angeles and Santa Barbara County. To date, the Port Hueneme Police Department has processed and live scanned 45 people, and that's only with 1 dispensary open at this point. So if you multiply that by 8, our agency will be processing well over 300 applicants here shortly, or by the end of this year is what we can best tell. And hence the need for the senior records technician to handle these duties. Slide that I really am very proud of, that I wanted to let everyone know. We are the only agency in the county of Ventura to have every single one of our officers, including the commander and the chief of police and all our dispatchers, 100% trained in crisis intervention training. We are, as you can see, we're at a complete 100%. And it really lends, again, to the officers and our ability to go out and handle people who are mentally ill, homeless, suffer from dementia or Alzheimer's, or actually dealing with some drug issues. So when we talk about partners and regionalization, that's something that's very big here. Councilmember Fig has brought this up quite a few times, and so I wanted to show how we have regionalized some of our resources and taken advantage of some of our local agencies and actually worked together with them. As I've presented in previous months, we are regularly doing DUI checkpoints with the Oxnard Police Department now, whether they be, in this one in particular here was at Channel Islands and Ventura Road. We've also done them at Victoria and Channel Islands, and so that's taking advantage of our sister agency right next to us, as well as working with the base on security operations and responding to assist them in their time of need. Our newest partner is BMW. They most recently donated 5 bicycles valued at $5,000 each, which was a $25,000 donation to the Port Hueneme Police Department, as well as on Thursday, I'm proud to announce they also donated a brand new electric BMW i3 vehicle to the Port Hueneme Police Department. So the Port Hueneme Police Department is going green. And so we now have our full electrical vehicle that we will be deploying out into the field, not necessarily as a police vehicle, but as part of our current fleet, whether it be used by a detective, a civilian, or court liaison officer, or property officer, maybe lend it to parking enforcement. So we are currently in the process of figuring out what the design is going to be in terms of decals, and I also need to bring it before council to actually accept this from BMW. So it's currently just sitting out in the parking lot until our next meeting, where I'll bring this before the consent agenda. And,
do you need a charging
approval.
station for that too?
We do, and so we currently have a 24-hour charging station, which is essentially plugging it into the wall, but BMW has asked a vendor, and we may be getting what's like a supercharger station, which will fully charge the vehicle within 2 hours, and our Public Works Department has already volunteered to install that for us. So that's a nice gift. So when I came here, I was very big on promoting the Port Hueneme Police Department and getting us out there and showing how transparent we are and really letting the public know what it is that we do here. So I really wanted to show that over the last 5 years how we have started to increase our public's awareness of what we actually do here. Now, while you only see 43 press releases for this year as compared to 54 last year, might I add that we just opened up a giant social media campaign with the use of Facebook and Instagram now, and you'll see how that's affected that. And that can also lend true as violent crime is down 43%, and typically most violent crimes that happen here in the Port Hueneme actually cause a press release so the public know what's going on here. But when your violent crime is down and you've only had 38, it really impacts our press releases. So social media, we have brought that on. I came in on day one. I promised to be a social media presence, and we have hit 1 million views in our first year. These are some of our more popular postings, but we use Facebook for just about everything, whether it be a press release, letting our public know what's happening in our city or in our department, educating them on scams, educating them about graffiti, new laws, help us identify a suspect. That was one of our more popular postings that I'll show you here, when an individual went into the school district and stole a bunch of gardening equipment, and they had a picture of it, and we posted that picture up, and within hours he was identified. The young lady there on the left, she actually received the most views, as she was a lost child who suffered from Down syndrome. We had over 5,000 shares and, as you can see, over 100,000 views. And that really lends to our public being on social media and really caring about what happens here in our department and wanting to help. And so here's a list of our top 5 Facebook postings. For this past year, we've posted 99 posts, and we have almost 2,500 followers now. And as a guide to show you just whether you're making an impact on Facebook or people are following you, you take 10% of your total population, and that gives you your figure as to where you should be. And with 22,000 people, we should be at 2,200 followers, and we've well exceeded that already in just the first year. And again, we are on Instagram. We now have nearly 400 followers, and this is a social media platform that really attracts younger people, as where Facebook attracts older people, so we are reaching out to the younger population as well. Crimemapping.com. So one of the things I noticed when I came here to the Port Hueneme Police Department is that we don't have any type of crime analysis department or software. So I wanted to walk you through this crimemapping.com, which is a very reasonably priced software that over 130 agencies in the state of California use. It involves the Port Hueneme Police Department putting the information into the system, and anyone from the public being able to go onto the system and see what crime is going on in their neighborhood to date. There's very little delay time. So I'm going to show you just how easy this is. So here is the logon page. All you're going to do is put in your state and the agency. So in this case, we took the Oxnard Police Department as an example. So you put in your information there, and voila, that's all the crime in the last 7 days, as of yesterday, in the city of Oxnard for the last 7 days. Now, that's not just the UCR crime, but that's drunk driving arrests, those are narcotic arrests, those are domestic violence calls. So you have every single type of call up there. So you can see what's going on in your neighborhood. So you bring that even tighter, and so there you see the Port Hueneme Police Department or area, which doesn't have any marks on it, but everything around it. And so you can actually click on any one of those dots there, as we've done here, and you can see exactly the date and time and what the crime was and the intersection or the 100 block of where this occurred. So in this case here, you have a vehicle break-in, and you can see that it happened in the 3100 block of Peninsula on said date and time. So this is something that is part of our goals for 2018 that I would like to bring here to the Port Hueneme Police Department and the citizens of Port Hueneme, so that at any time, because perception is everything, and people think that there's crime rampant in their neighborhood, but now they can actually really take a look and see what's going on, because sometimes perception trumps reality. And you can also print out a report. It gives you reports and tells you exactly what's going on in your neighborhood or throughout the city. You can isolate specific crimes if you want to know all the vehicle thefts. It actually has a sex registrant component, so you can see where all the sex registrants are in the city, and you can do so many different things with this crime mapping program. So one of our goals for this year was to become better prepared in case of an emergency. So this is just a slide of all the different things that we have done in 2017. It is our disaster preparedness guide, actually starting our LISTOS classes, which is our CERT program in terms of training our citizens in emergency preparedness. Here we have a picture of Commander Albertson assisting the American Red Cross with the installation of smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms in our city, as well as you may have recently seen Facebook posts that I put on encouraging our citizens to sign up to VC Alert, which is a total separate system from Reverse 911. It actually encourages people to sign up their cellular phones as opposed to their landline phones, because most of us carry our cell phones with us all the time. And so you can set it up so it alerts you for specific areas where you work, where you live, and so in case of a natural disaster or specific alert, you can set up the alerts not only for natural disasters, you can set up for crime alerts. community alerts, and different items. So we recently put out a Facebook post encouraging all of our residents to sign up for that program. So I'm going to go over our accomplishments for 2017. First and foremost, and the most important, we had a 43% decrease in violent crime with an overall decrease of 5%. We completely revised and customized our 700-page police manual, which hadn't been revised in over 8 years. So that is currently under review by our city attorneys as well as the Police Association. Our emergence on social media, as I went through that slide, over 2,500 Facebook followers, 400 on Instagram, and really using that as a tool to show our public what it is that we're doing here. Increased community engagement, attending events such as the Boys and Girls Club events, Coffee with the Chief, a National Night Out, Cops for Tots, tree lighting ceremonies, youth involvement fairs. These are the different things we are doing to stay involved and engage with the community. We recently purchased the UTV vehicle that we now use out on the beach on a regular basis, which assists us in so many different ways, and will really prove to be an asset, especially during the summer season. The purchase of new equipment, we were able to purchase new tasers and digital recorders, as well as we will be having our officers now carrying smartphones, which will be a valuable tool in so many different ways because they can install what's called the ICOP software, which is being used by the Ventura County Sheriff's Department, Ventura Police Department, Oxnard Police Department, and it's a tool where they can actually get into certain databases immediately in the palm of their hand, as well as so many other different things. Obviously the photo features and video features, so they're excited to be getting those within the next month. I went over our emergency preparedness booklets and all that we've done this past year in terms of preparing our citizens for emergencies. When I came here, we were still printing out police reports, putting them in file folders and sticking them in the cabinet. And so we've now transitioned to a totally paperless environment. Everything's now digitized, and we are now working backwards to digitize and scan all of our paperwork for the last 20 or 25 years about. And again, with the assistance of the new records technician, we should have that. Well, it's one of our goals for 2018 to get that all done. A renewed investment in our Explorer program. When I came on board in March, we had 5 Explorers. We're now upwards of 16 with a new Academy class coming in this summer. So we're hoping to get our program now up to 20 police Explorers. You guys have all seen our domestic violence video that we did this past October. Our Cops for Tots program that we started this year as well. And obviously the creation of cannabis-related processes. This was something new. We had to create the wheel here, especially on the police department side. So that was a major accomplishment this past year. So what do we look forward to for 2018, and what are some of our goals? 5% overall reduction in crime. The implementation of our digital recorders that our officers are now going to be carrying and mandated to record all their contacts out in the field. Smartphones I'd mentioned, and the use of the ICOP software. Our customer service window, one of the first things I noticed when I came here was the tinted customer service window on the police side. There's an actual reason for that. It's not that we want to be impersonal, but I'm currently working with the Public Works Director to get that window moved over to the other wall so we can take that tint down and so you can actually see the person you're talking to and be engaged, because it's almost bordering rude in terms of not being able to see who you're talking to. And the reason for the tint on the window is so that you can't see the dispatcher's computer screens, which the public is prohibited from seeing. So it's just a matter of, we cannot change the dispatch station and move that around, so we have to move the window. The crimemapping.com software that I spoke about earlier. Something I noticed that we don't do here is DUI cost recovery. When we talk about creating revenue for the city currently doesn't go after drunk drivers in terms of recovering the expenses for that as state law allows. And we're talking upwards of over $1,000 for every DUI driver. And if we arrested 89 DUI drivers last year, that's $89,000 that we're missing out on. The revitalization of our police website. That's something that'll kind of work hand in hand with what the city is doing here this next year, but our website definitely needs an overhaul. And then funding to purchase a police Explorer van. One of the things I promised our Explorer program, if we were going to build our numbers up, we actually needed a vehicle to drive them around. When you have 20 kids and you don't have a passenger van, it's very difficult to get all these youth around, and so you're transporting them in 4 or 5 police vehicles to get to specific events and competitions, or even just around the city to assist with details. So we talked about the Community Benefit Fund, and so I thought I'd just throw this out there in terms of potential requests in the future, or what the police department would be looking at, and how this would fit under the Community Benefit Fund umbrella. And that is a request for the Youth Involvement Fair, Cops for Tots, the crime mapping software, because it helps the entire community in terms of knowing what's going on, and what a better use of funds than the Community Benefit Fund for that. Parent Project, both English and Spanish, and educating our parents who sometimes need help in knowing how to address youth issues, teen issues, and then a donation to our Police Explorer program. You see also there right in the middle is updated computer system for our city council chambers. I found out today just how antiquated this system is, and not being able to play my videos in 4K and 3D that I wanted to play this evening, as well as the format that we currently see up there, which is square as opposed to the panoramic format that's currently, as you see on your computer screens. So I was even willing to take on that project. So again, this would better assist our community and the people that are actually watching what's going on, because right now someone couldn't come in and bring in a certain style of video and play it because the computer system couldn't handle it. And that's something I found out earlier today, so I thought I'd throw that on there.
You guys want to watch it again?
So with that, that ends or concludes my presentation. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you for a great presentation.